All right, so the first one is how smartphone cameras affect memory. Art is for art's sake. It belongs on the wall. Design is more so to be used. Why I continue to use Tidal. Woo. How the original Facebook and current TikTok compare. Then I wrote full circle. Screens have accelerated copy culture. Pull versus push students. What do? Music used to feel like treasure. Now it feels more like a commodity. Code switching. Whoop. Folks looking back in order to cope with an uncertain future. So I'm just going to kind of spend 5 minutes per topic for this cast. What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Office Hour Tangents, where I typically come straight from class and talk about the tangents that I may have went on or not have went on in class. But today I'm coming straight from class. Today's class, the class I taught today was intro to design. I think it's called intro to design. It used to be called basic graphic design, but it's intro to design. But I'm coming straight from that class, and this tangent has nothing to do with this class or the tangent I went off on in class. Actually, the tangent I went off on in class had to do with AI, of course. That's like the conversation that's taken over everything. I'm tired of talking about AI, at least for right now. But the what I want to talk about today is just everything. All right. So what I mean by everything is, I know a lot of us. I'm just, if you're watching this, I'm just assuming, I will put money on the fact that you have some kind of notes list on your phone with just stuff written in it, whether it's a to-do list or, a shopping list or something just to kind of help your brain remember things, right? And I have lists everywhere. It's like too many lists. It's like I have a list disease. It's crazy. But thinking about a topic for today's podcast, I was like going through the list of that I've labeled podcast ideas, right? And it's too long. I was looking at this list literally for 20 minutes. And it's just looking through the list, reading through all the things that I've written. And so I decided today for this podcast, or, I'm just tired of calling these podcasts because I really don't think they're podcasts. It's just weird. I don't know what this is, but I still envision podcasts as audio first. And I guess this could be considered a video podcast, but it's a label and I don't like labels. But for this show, I'm going to talk about all the items on that podcast list, on my podcast list, that have some kind of merit, but I don't think deserve a full show. Now, there might be some in here once I start talking like, oh my goodness, this needs to be a full show, and maybe I'll branch out. But right now, some of these have been sitting on the list for a couple years. And so I'm just going to kind of spend 5 minutes per topic for this cast. Only 5 minutes. Have a total of 10 topics. Not sure if I'm going to get to all of them, but I'm only going to spend five minutes on each. So let's see how this goes. All right, the first one is how smartphone cameras, and I'm just going to read kind of what I wrote. So it's like in the moment I might be driving in at a stoplight. I'm like, let me write this down before I forget. I might be somewhere where I don't have a pen or a pencil, but I have to forget. I have to remember, and I don't know what I wrote down. So I'm kind of going to read kind of what I wrote. But let me set the timer first. All right, so the first one is how smartphone cameras affect memory. Now, I can't remember what I was thinking about when I wrote down this topic idea, but when I read it again, it sparked what I was thinking about kind of in that moment. And I was just thinking about how smartphones, when we're kind of interacting with our smartphones, specifically our cameras, since everybody pretty much has a high-end camera in their pocket, I think it's affecting our memory. Probably because I think it's affecting my memory. Okay. So kind of the list. So I have a podcast list on my phone. Before I had a phone to put it on, I would have probably I'll probably written it down on like a journal or something like that. Or maybe if y'all was more advanced, I'm carrying around a voice recorder and I'll speak into it. But since I don't have to do that, and I know I basically have an extra brain right here, I don't have to remember as much stuff. So I'm wondering if that's causing us as a human race that uses these phones, it causes us to be able to remember more, in that we can kind of segment, like things we need to remember, we'll remember, and then things that aren't, I don't have to remember my shopping list. That's not an important thing to remember. I can just write it down. So now I have more space in my brain. Whatever percentage of the brain I use for memory, I have more, I call it space, to remember more or more important things. Hopefully that's how it works, but I don't think it's working like that. I honestly think that the smartphone camera is making us remember things less, or remember things less vividly. So instead of, seeing somebody's shoes, for instance, like I saw some dope shoes and I'll see my boy later, and I was like, I saw somebody wearing some dope shoes, and I explain the shoes. I'll explain how the Nike swoosh look, or how the 3 stripes look, or were there stripes at all, and the color. And when I looked at those shoes the first time, that snapshot I took in my brain was more vivid. This is just my conjecture. I don't know, but I feel like it was more vivid than it is now. So right now I just see it. I see they're dope, and I just take a picture of them and I keep it moving. I don't necessarily remember what I took a picture of, because I know it's in here to recall. So instead of having to recall it up here, I can recall it right here. So I think it's that I can just speak for myself. I think it is affecting my memory. I don't know when you get into short term, long term, all that good stuff. But I think the camera specifically, I mean, the smartphone, no doubt, but the camera and the video capabilities of these smartphones are affecting our memories. We can just take a whole video of a moment. So I can go see my son play basketball, and instead of just watching him play and then describing it to my boys later, like he did this move, he did this, he was pouting, he shouldn't have did this. Now I'm just videotaping the whole thing. And then what happens, which I hate, I don't even like admitting this, I'll kind of watch the game after the game. So during the game, I'm more video capture, make sure I'm capturing the footage. And then after game, I'm able to kind of enjoy the game, right? Which is backwards, which is whack. I kind of try to do both. I kind of try to watch the game and don't watch it through the view saver. But sometimes I miss moments. So it's just a weird kind of thing. So I just think it's kind of like leaving us maybe with less dope stuff in our heads to kind of pull from, because we don't need to put a lot of dopeness in our head anymore, because we have it here. So if anybody goes through their photos and, is trying to look, you can find something dope from 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago. There's something here. But I think we used to do that up here more. And I think it's affecting our memory, and it's affecting our creativity. Okay? So, boom, I made that in under 5 minutes. I could go on, but I think I'll stop there. So next topic. Talib Kweli. And I saw Talib Kweli. It's probably a podcast I was listening to. I can't really remember. I don't know if I read this or I saw it or heard it. But he basically said that more so people in Europe, European nations, they see art for art's sake, right? Whereas Africans see art more as practical, right? And that caught my ear. And let me hit the start. That caught my ear because that's how I kind of, that's the difference between art and design. I think art is for art's sake. It belongs on the wall. Design is more so to be used, right? So it sparked my ear, but then it made me start thinking about how I approach art. Okay, I came up thinking I was doing art, but really what I was doing was design. A lot of my sketches, a lot of my doodles in middle school were like bubble letters. I was doing graffiti, but really what I was doing was typography, right? Even in elementary school, I designed the yearbook cover. You know, I like doing things like that and doing flyers. And I just thought it was all art. I didn't know what design was until I found out what design was. But as I've kind of matured in this lane, I have came to the realization maybe a couple years ago that I feel like I don't do art. I do, you know, every couple years I'll paint. I'll have an inspiration for a painting and I'll do that. But what I do for art, I think I create businesses as art. This can be a full topic, but I really feel like when I create a business, so I have an idea in my head, and then oftentimes if it's a good enough idea or if I have the time right, you know, in that moment, I'll like to kind of like flesh that idea out. And, you know, the businesses that I've kind of designed and launched, I do it, and I've just realized this recently, I do it almost like an artist creates art and then launches it or like displays it, right? Or announces it's done. So I'll do a business. For instance, I did a business called just recently, Playlist Party. So playlistparty.online, go check it out. Playlist Party was something that an idea I had to kind of get people out of the algorithm of discovering music. And so I was like, I wonder if something like this exists. Couldn't find anything that was like close to what I was thinking about. So I just build it. Whenever I think of something and I look out there and there's nothing there, I'll just build it, right? But the way I'll build it. Sometimes I'll do the business plan, but the business plan almost makes it not fun. But I'll come up with the logo. If it needs a website, I'll do the website. In this instance, I did a MVP, which is a minimum viable product. And I made basically an app for it. It's at playlistparty.online. And it's a business. I mean, it's not a business. Business people wouldn't call it a business because I'm not making money off of it. I'm not running it like a business. But if you stumble upon playlistparty.online, it looks like a business that is running. But once I kind of get it up and I do it a few times, I'm thinking about the next art I'm going to do. I kind of do that business like I'll create it, I'll design it, whatever you want to call it, and then I'll say, look, everybody, look what I did. That's how I do my businesses. Look, everybody look at it. And then I'm on to the next one. And what I really need is a business partner or somebody that I can hand these ideas of businesses off to, and then they can market it and we can work together to figure out how to make money from it. But once I get to that point where it's time to run it like a business, you know, and ultimately try to make money off of it, it's not fun anymore. It's like, that's not what I did this for. I did this to kind of do it, not to run it, because I know running it, I can't do anything else. So, and I value time just as much as a currency. So if I'm spending all my time kind of running this business trying to get money, that means I can't do this other stuff I want to do over here. So I really approach, and it really, like I said, to go back to the original, I heard Talib Kweli, he was like, you know, and not even putting Europeans and Africans in it, because that can, as soon as people can hear that, I know people are, they be like, well, European, you know, that's not true, because it's just a country, you know, Africa's a big country. I get it. This was his quote. I'm not even quoting him. He just alluded to that fact, that general fact. And I feel like I create businesses almost like an artist creates art. That's really how I do it. I think I do that. Athlete shirts was like that. I ran this business called Athlete Shirts, and it was a cool business. You can create what kind of athlete you were and all that stuff. Those who know. And then I kind of launched it like, look what I did, everybody. It was like a gallery. It was like a gallery introducing my art. And then this is like, on to the next one. All right. So 2 topics down. I'm kind of doing well right here with a little time to spare. All right. The next topic is why I continue to use Tidal. Ooh, I know why I wrote that. Why I continue to use Tidal. So I use Tidal for my music. That's my primary music streaming source, even though, you know, don't judge me, but I subscribe to about 4 streaming services. Tidal, Apple Music, YouTube Music, 5, SoundCloud, Mixcloud. A couple of those, few of those is for the business I just mentioned, Playlist Party. Sometimes all the streaming services don't have all the songs. So I just kind of have them all. But a little bit of it is childhood trauma, just not having cable. So I just like to have all the channels and all the stuff. I just do. So, but why do I use Tidal primarily? It's not even on some people's list. Some people listening to this might not even remember what Tidal is or think it's closed down. But Tidal is a streaming service, not to get into it and take too much of my time, but it's that streaming service that gained popularity when Jay-Z took it over and then had all the artists and said all the artists are going to get paid more because they're kind of buying into it, and then you had the stage full of artists and all that stuff. Look it up. I use Tidal when almost nobody else, shout out to Shells, he uses Tidal also, but almost nobody else uses Tidal. I use Tidal still because it's still primarily a music streaming service. I don't do it because they was the first in the block to offer like hi-fi audio, studio quality audio, all that good stuff. I'm not an audiophile, and I primarily play my music through the car or earphones, so I don't need the highest quality audio. But Tidal still, because when I'm on any of these other services, or to say the major services, Apple Music, YouTube Music, and Spotify, they do a lot of other stuff. They have podcasts, they're venturing into social media, they have videos. It's a lot. They have a lot going on. Whereas Tidal, the interface is still music. It's music everywhere. They have some kind of podcast, but it's buried. It's like they tried to go that route, but that's not their lane. It's still music, music, music. And I think that's still valuable, like a place to go to for music. So I think music nowadays is getting watered down, since it's kind of like, how should I explain? I feel like music's getting watered down because there's too much music out there. Not saying that there wasn't always a lot of music out there, but I'm talking about there's too much music at the end of everybody's fingertips. Everybody that has access to technology basically has access to all the music ever created in the world, if you kind of look at it like that. And I just think that's overexposure, but I still use the service that's just music. It's not watering it down. This music service, Spotify, is not watered down with podcast. YouTube Music, sometimes you don't know where the YouTube videos end and the music begins. They're kind of starting to mingle with each other. So I don't know. SoundCloud the same way. Like SoundCloud, I go to SoundCloud when I want to, explore more underground stuff that hasn't been discovered. But then same thing. I don't know if this is a old school LimeWire or Napster kind of stream, or if it's I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the remix of it. It's just but the Tidal, if an album came out today, it's on there. It's just the music. It's not tied to a podcast. It's not tied to video. It's not allowing you to talk to your friends. I think they have that kind of capability, but it's not well fleshed out, and I've never used it. I can't listen to it with my friends. It's not going to crossfade music. It's just music. Listen to it, move on. And that's why I still use Tidal. And it doesn't hurt the fact that it's still the streaming service that pays out the most to the artist. But yeah, that's why I still use Tidal. And I just think I've had that topic because it was one of those threads where I'm like I'm a text messaging people and they're sending me Apple Music stuff, and I'm like, shoot, I'm gonna send them my Tidal stuff. I don't care if they don't have Tidal. Like, they're gonna make me view something through Apple Music. I'm gonna make them see the Tidal interface. And so I'll write that down, why I still use Tidal. If I've expanded on this topic, I can get a little more deep into like how I think is Tidal going to still be around in 5 years. I hope so. It's looking shaky. But yeah, topic down. I'm doing good right now. To pat myself on the back. So, here we go. Now I'm flowing. I don't know if this sounds kind of corny. It might be sounding corny, but that's cool because I'm just trying to get all these so I can start clean for the new year. Next topic. I wrote how the original Facebook and current TikTok compare. Then I wrote full circle. How the current, and I wrote current, how Facebook, the modern day Facebook, and TikTok compare or are related in a full circle moment. I really can't remember. A lot of these things are out of context, but I can vaguely remember the tie-in that I started to see. I think I was researching old Facebook, right, when it was called the Facebook. And I think I was, that's because it was a true tangent. I was talking about it in class and trying to explain to these kids. Mind you, these kids are 18, 19, 20, 21, right? So they were born, they don't remember the Facebook. They just remember Facebook. So I was trying to explain the Facebook to them using the Wayback Machine, and not to get too much in it, but the Facebook was a way for Zuckerberg and them to kind of like see hot girls and see if they're hot or not. Like it was kind of like that in the very, very beginning, right? It was just a way to be nosy, see people, and things like that. And I think that was how it started, and it kind of evolved into what Facebook is now, which is, I honestly don't know what Facebook is, because it's not even Facebook anymore. It's Meta, and Facebook is just one of the things it does, right? It does too much. You can still just keep in contact with your friends and family, but it's more of a posting app and photos and video, and this is a kind of a media app, whereas the original Facebook, I think, was more like how TikTok is now. But just, TikTok, you really don't use a lot of words. It's just short form video. But that's how people utilized the Facebook in the beginning. It was just like quick hitters, being nosy, looking at people. TikTok is the same way, being nosy and looking at people, right? And the simplicity coming full circle. So Facebook starting off simple, ending up super complicated. I think TikTok, it gave way for TikTok to come in and grab the people that want that simplicity again, which history has shown is most people. They just kind of that simplicity, I don't have to worry. Facebook, you go to Facebook, Facebook's like a full-on application now. It's a full-on, it's just bloatware. It's like Photoshop. It's just too much going on. And that simplicity. So, and I remember the other conversation I was having in class behind this. The question was 20-year-olds, because I'm 48. I shouldn't have these answers. Y'all should have the answers because y'all are the golden demographic. I asked them how they saw social media going forward. Like, what was the future of social media? Of course, they didn't have an answer. Like, it was crickets. It was crickets galore. But it forced me to think about it. And I'm not sure if there is a way forward for social media. Social media, as we know it, we might have reached the pinnacle of what social media is ever going to be. I think it could change into something that we don't know yet, because I don't see anything that's going to hit. We've tried everything. TikTok, short form video. We have Instagram, quick hitter photos without text. We have, Facebook, everything. Then we have the obscure ones like Clubhouse, where it's just audio only, almost like little short, not even short, but it's audio only. You can't write anything. You could chat a little bit. You have, not to get through all of them, but and how Facebook not Facebook, Clubhouse, that's like the newest one I could think about. It just didn't really do what it was supposed to. That was supposed to be the next thing, is audio only. And it didn't rock. And TikTok's still the king. And Instagram, especially their Reels, is still the king. And they've been the king for a long time, which indicates to me that we may have reached the pinnacle of social media. And whoever comes with what's next might be the next Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, blah, blah, blah. Like, what's that next? Right? That's definitely a next topic. Maybe that would be my new podcast for 2026 of new stuff. Like, what's next? Let's call it What's Next, and just talk about, like, what's next in social media? What's next in TVs? What's next in society? Blah, blah, blah. I don't know. But, like, that got me thinking about this, the full circle. Original Facebook, current TikTok. Almost the same kind of purpose. All right, boom, hit that right on the dot. Flowing here. I wish I had an intermission. Maybe I'm post that I have some kind of intermission or some ad. You know, people have ads. Blah 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 for my spot. Yeah, I'm gonna get there. I almost did a little commercial for playlistparty.online. Go check that out. There's really nothing you can do. You can just check out how dope it is and let me know if you want to participate in the playlist party. No doubt. All right. Next topic. Screens have accelerated copy culture. I know exactly what I was thinking about when I wrote that down. Hit start. Since we have screens, talking earlier, since we have these supercomputers, high-end cameras and camcorders, and then basically TV screens in our pocket, and screens, when I'm saying screens, TV screens, computer monitors, whatever, wherever there's kiosks, there's screens everywhere. I'm looking at two screens right now. Screens have accelerated copy culture in that I think I was actually researching other podcasts. That's why I wrote that down. I was researching other podcasts for ideas for this podcast, right? And I saw something that I was like, ooh. My first thing to think about was, ooh, I'm gonna do that. Exactly how he's doing that, I'm gonna utilize that in mine. And I stopped myself because I'm a hip hop head and I'm from the hip hop culture. And that sounds like biting. That felt like biting. And biting is something you don't do in hip hop. At least the hip hop I grew up, at least the MCing hip hop that I grew in, the hip hop that's MCing, right? You don't copy. You don't hear DMX and then like, oh yeah, I'm gonna start barking like DMX and come out. But that's my day. Today, with the screens in everybody's pocket, it's accelerated copy culture in that we just have to chill. We don't have to go anywhere to see dope stuff. So then we can copy what we perceive as dope just using these. Like, oh, that's dope. I'm going to do that. Whereas there was a little work that had to be put in not too long ago to copy something, right? And get reprimanded for copying. So I had to go somewhere, see somebody dope. So for instance, I can go somewhere, I see somebody breakdancing, and they're doing a move that I've never seen before, and I'm a breakdancer, and so the next party I go to, I'm gonna steal his move. If, this is just Jeopardy information about me if I ever get famous. Like, what's Brandan Craft's favorite movie? Tap, with Gregor Hines and Sammy Davis Jr. and Savion Glover. Tap. And in that movie, he explained that tap dancers most of the time steal other people's steps, but then they kind of put their own little thing on it and then it becomes their own. Like, that's just the culture. And that's the culture for a lot of things. So I might have gone somewhere, seen somebody do a breakdance move. I take it, bring it to my party, do the move, act like it's mine. Act like I came up with that because I put a little thing on it. Now I can just watch somebody breakdancing in Tokyo, steal that Tokyo move. And I think these screens have accelerated copy culture in that we're seeing, so like I always go back to hip hop. We're seeing, there was only one DMX. I've never heard anybody try to be like DMX. Right? I think everybody sounds like Future and Lil Wayne and a bunch of other people now. It's just copy culture. Every podcast is starting to look and sound the same. I'm dropping a podcast, so I'm not going to be a hypocrite. But, when I watch these podcasts, the sports podcasts, they got a similar formula. They got a similar style. They're using similar lingo. Apps are looking all the same. So websites are looking all the same. People are starting to just use these to copy more. They can just kind of like copy people's style just using the screen that's everywhere. And that's why I kind of wrote, screens have accelerated copy culture. And I thought that could be a topic, but I don't think that's a topic that I don't think I can expand on that. I probably can have a good conversation about it, but I'm going to stop that right there. All right. Next topic. Pull versus push students. What do I do? And I'll make sure I didn't cover this and plan and practice. I didn't practice for any of this. So this is all, I'm almost setting myself up in this. Pull versus push students. What do I do? What do I do? What I was thinking about in that moment, I was in class. I wasn't in class. I was actually talking to a fellow professor. And we were talking about the students, which we do often, right? We were talking about the past students versus students today and how we think and and we was going back and forth, and I asked him a question. Do you think you have to pull stuff from students? So in our discipline, it's design. So you try to pull creativity or pull participation out of them. Or do you feel like more like you're pouring into them, or that's the best tack, to just pour into them as much as you can, and hopefully they'll take some from it. And you know what? I can't remember how that conversation went, but as I think about it now, I really find myself doing more pulling when it comes to the students I teach nowadays. Is they're sitting there and they won't say anything unless I ask them to say anything, and even then they won't say anything. They'll say, it's cool. And then I gotta pull out of them, like, why is it cool? It's cool because it's colorful. Okay, what are the colors doing for you? How are they making you feel? Cool. Well, the yellow kind of makes me feel kind of happy. Yellow always makes me happy, and the blue, you talked about in class, blue's always cool. I'm not mad at blue. It kind of makes me feel. And then I'm like, okay, then I get it flowing. But I felt like I gotta pull more often, or more so than I did maybe just 10 years ago, right? And I don't know, it could be any number of reasons, but I just feel like I have to pull from these students. Whereas sometimes, I'm pouring, but I just feel like more times I have to pull. And I guess in that instance where I'm pouring into the students, that's when you're like teaching skills, right? You're just teaching, like, I know these skills, you don't. Hopefully after this class or after this day, you'll know these skills too. So then I'm pouring into it. I'm pouring into them my resources, or my contacts, or my experiences, or in all that stuff. That's pouring. And a lot of times the students, if they're open to it, they're allowing the information to be poured into them, right? But I would say the way I've evolved as a professor, I'm doing more pulling. I feel like the pouring, I don't know if they're taking it. I don't know if they're just looking at me. It's kind of weird. Like, I started teaching full time in, don't get me lying, like 2008. So just mind you, the iPhone came out in 2007. So when I first started teaching, thankfully, and I was adjunct teaching a couple years before that, thankfully I was teaching classes where they didn't all have smartphones. So that's how long I've been teaching. I started teaching when they did not have screens in their hand, and they were just looking at me. Only thing I had to contend with was computer screens or laptops if they have them open. But, that was easy. Like, everybody close your laptops. Boom, we can get started. But, with these, and then they have their iPads, and then there's often computers in the classroom, and they have earbuds in. It's just a lot. It's a lot to kind of compete with. So I feel like the pouring method, if they're not reciprocal, they're just kind of going in and just falling all on the ground. It's just waste of time. Whereas the pulling, I feel like I have to kind of reach them. I have to reach them somehow. And I have to be patient and let them, and get them to me, get them on my level, instead of kind of trying to pour into them so they can maybe end up floating up to my level. I'm doing more of the pulling. But I'm sure that, say I had had this topic with another professor or another educator, they might have different methods, right? But that pull versus push, I think I also seen that maybe in an article, and it caused me to ask my colleagues what they thought about it. Boom, end of that topic. Going to the next one. So let me see. Next topic. Why am I looking at this like I'm an old person? I just felt like an old person just then. Next topic. I don't have glasses, and even whatever people think I need glasses, I don't need glasses. It just needs to focus. It just takes a little more time to focus. I wrote, music used to feel like treasure. Now it feels more like a commodity. Now, there wasn't one moment for this, but it's just it's just something I've been thinking about for a minute now. In that, so I'm gonna paint a picture right here. I'm gonna paint a picture for this one. Every Tuesday back in the day. So when I say back in the day, I'm saying from 1997 to 2007, maybe 6. I was going to the record store every Tuesday because Tuesday was when new music dropped. So I was going to the record store every Tuesday. I was going to, and I'm going to be specific because I'm painting the picture. I was going to Ohio State's campus. Remember, I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. When I was in Ohio, when I was in Columbus, a couple of those years I was in Pittsburgh. When I was in Columbus, I would go to Ohio State's campus and I would go to World Records to look at new stuff. And I would go to Used Kids Records, which was underneath. And it was different locations back in the day. Then something happened and it ended up together or something like that. But I go to Used Kids. No, I think Used Kids was upstairs. I can't remember. Upstairs or downstairs, on campus, on High Street. And I would usually use stuff. So usually I have a budget, not really a budget. I would just see what's out. But I would usually, 2 CD, maybe 3 CD budget. And it'll be a good day if I could find 2 used CDs and a new CD. A dope day if I could find 3 used CDs that's dope. Right? But that's every Tuesday. And I felt like it was a treasure in that I would search for it. I would look through like, oh, this came out. Let me get that. And let me find something that I don't even know I'm looking for, but I find it. Oh, Public Enemy second album. I never had that. Get that. Bow. So now when I get in the car, I have that little thing to open up the CDs, right? That little shink. I would open up the CD and it was like I was opening up treasure. Especially when I got a CD where it's always something I've never heard before, right? Or something I haven't heard in a long time. But the process of opening it up, tearing away that sticky little thing at the top that was annoying, and popping over the CD and putting it in the CD player and getting the liner notes open when I had time and look through to see who produced everything. I felt like I had treasure and I paid money for it. I paid $15, $12, $7, $5, whatever. But I paid money for it and it was treasure. Even if I got it home and it was whack, I would keep listening to it because I bought it and I'm not taking it back. And then maybe sometimes that album would grow on me and I gave it time because I spent money on it. That's what treasure is. Nowadays, I feel like music is more of a commodity, meaning it's commodity like tissue or like eggs. Something you buy, like laundry detergent. Something we just buy, when we need it, every week, every month. It's on the shopping list. It's not exciting. Yeah, there's going to be music. There's no like new music Tuesdays. Now, new music drops on Fridays most of the time. But it's not standing alone. It's just in the whatever streaming service you look at. It says, hey, the picks for you. And maybe the algorithm shows you the new hotness. I don't know. But it's just something. It's just something to have. It's something to have playing in the background. It's something to kind of rock to in the car. But it's not treasure. It's not something to cherish anymore. I feel like music is not something that is cherished anymore. I think people cherish moments. I think people go to a show and experience a moment with that music, right? But as far as like getting the music, like I don't even, it's more so like the biggest moment I can see from the past couple years is the Kendrick Lamar Drake beef when they were dropping singles in moments, right? And it was like going back and forth and it was like moments, but we weren't going out and buying it. We weren't making a decision to get treasure. We were just consuming it like a podcast. It's almost like music is more like podcast than it is like something that somebody really concentrated on and came up with and had a team coming up with, the concepts and the instrumentation and the breakdowns and the editing. And it just feels like, let's just do a song real quick. Oh, I did a song. Upload it. Cool. Hopefully somebody listens to it. That's how I feel like now. It feels like buying tissue, right? Buying some cookies. That's what it feels like to me. And I hope something comes along that changes that perspective. Playlist part of that online. Right on time. Next topic. Code switching. Whoop. All right. I just wrote down code switching. And that's a broad topic. That could probably be one of those video essays that people be doing. I was thinking about doing those video essays, but it seemed like I still might do one. I've done one that I think was kind of like a video essay, but it's a different vibe. But this is a video essay type of topic. But for the 5 minutes, code switching. If you don't know what code switching, real quick, look it up. But code switching is changing your demeanor. In this case, in a lot of people's cases, changing how you talk in different environments. So you might act a certain way over here, and you might act a certain way over here. Okay? And a different way over here. I tend to think that I don't code switch. I'm kind of the same everywhere. The way I'm talking to you is the way I talk to my students, is the way I talk to my family. I'm kind of consistent. But, story. I tried to code switch when I first started working, when I graduated undergrad. And I got a job at Nationwide Insurance, and it was the typical job. It was cubicles. It was business casual. It was everybody get coffee in the morning. It was the copy machine is broke. It was like Office Space, the movie, right? And I've never worked in corporate America like that. And I just naturally thought that's what you're supposed to do. So it was, I tried to code switch. I tried to like change the way I spoke, which I've never had to do before or never did. And I remember that whole day. It lasted about a day, like a half a day. I remember, because I was meeting all new people, and it's like, introduce you. This is Brandon. He's going to be new in the teams type of stuff. It's like, I'm not even going to do it. I'm not even going to do it because I felt like every time I did it, like verbalized or even just acted a certain way, and I felt ridiculous. But what it is what code switching usually is, and like I said, I'm not a historian. I'm not well read on this topic. This is just my conjecture. But it's kind of like you're trying to make the other party feel comfortable. So you're going to act more like they're acting when you're in their presence. You're going to act more like they're acting, whether it's natural or not, when you're in their presence. So in this presence, I've never been in a business casual everyday job where I had to be there and punch clock and, get off, and I'm in a cubicle and, all that stuff. So, hey, how you doing? I'm not saying that's how it sounded, but I felt like whenever I spoke or acted like that, I felt like the receiving party saw right through me. I felt like the receiving party, as soon as I opened my mouth, they were like, he don't talk like that. He's faking. He's fake. I don't like it. That's how I felt. Right? But that's my story. And to this day, I think from that day on, and that was like I said, that was 2000, right? 2001. From that day, I just never have tried to code switch. It's like, I'm just be consistent. Hopefully, how I normally am, I'm not too loud. I'm not too soft-spoken. I don't curse too much. I do curse, but I have to watch who I'm cursing in front of, which words I'm using, and I have to be responsible in that aspect. I think some people have to code switch so they really tell their brain from, okay, boom, I'm at work, it's 8 o'clock, I'm here. So I'm not even using a lot of the words that I normally use because I'm not that person right now. I'm a different person, right? And then when I get home, I change into the different person. Some of my friends are the best code switchers. I've heard them, they're my boys, and I call them up on the phone at work, and they answer the phone, and I ask for them. So say my boy's name is Larry, and I know how Larry is. What up, Larry? So what's up, bro? How you doing? Bro? He ain't nothing. The wife tripping, I'm tripping. That's how we talking. But then when I call Larry up at work because I need something, Larry answered the phone like, hey, this is Larry, how may I help you? And I'm like, hey, what's up, Larry? This is B. I got a question real quick. He's like, hey, what's going on, brother? Hey, what's your question? And it's almost like, And I remember when I called Larry, then I started messing with him like, bro, this is me. You don't have to talk like that. But yeah, I'm still at work. So what's the question you have, sir? And I'm just tripping. So now I'm on the other line really going, ham, like I'm speaking very ebonically, oriented right now. And he's just on the other side in his code. He's speaking in code, right? He's almost speaking in code to me like, hey, don't mess this up for me. Boom. That's the first one that I ran out of time on, but that's dope. But yeah, that code switch can go, that topic can go a lot of different ways because everybody, I think, approaches it completely different. But that's one that I'll probably bring back up for a full topic, no doubt. Next topic. Last topic that I have written down. This is a deep topic. Woo. I wrote down folks looking back in order to cope with an uncertain future. I wrote that, but I gotta folks looking back in order to cope with an uncertain future. I do remember writing that. Kind of remember what was on my mind. This is how I feel right now, kind of like right now, talking about right now. We are in the year 2026. It is mid-January. And I think a lot of people around the world, but I can just speak about locally, and I can just really speak about me. I don't like speaking for others or, prognosticating and all that stuff, but I'll just speak about me. And I think if I'm thinking about it, there's at least 1 million people thinking the same thing, right? That's how I think. The future is uncertain right now. I can honestly say that I don't know what 5 years from now is going to look like. I don't know what 3 years is going to look like, which is exciting for somebody like me, right? But I could see that as very, very scary to analytical planning type people when they don't really know, when the future is very uncertain, when it's unknown. It's like, I don't know. That causes a lot of anxiety in others. And I have seen that I think that people are starting to look back at what was done or what was popping in the past to cope as a coping mechanism for how they feel right now. In that, and this is probably somebody, a historian or somebody watching this, might that's called something. There's probably a label for it I'm talking about, but I don't know them. But it's like a reminiscent thing, and it's probably happened throughout history. I just feel like it's happening right now. So with the uncertain future, with AI, with the officials we have in office right now, with we had a daggone comet that was flying around in our solar system that a lot of people didn't know what it was. We got alien sightings everywhere. We have UAPs flying around a lot. It's a lot going on in these times right now. And I think it's causing people to go back and listen to older music. This is why I really wrote that down, but then I did some research down the line when I did write this down. But I was talking about music in general. I mean, specifically music in that the new artists are, at least in, like I said, my, R&B and hip hop, the new artists aren't really, from what I've been reading, they're not really doing that well on tour. So they're not really doing that well. They might be streaming billions of records, and they might be all on podcasts and in reality shows. But when they do a show, when they need their fans to come out and support their show, because that's where they get most of their money, people aren't coming out because there's no draw. But the old school artists are kind of rocking right now. So people are going to the old school hip hop shows, and they want to see more established artists because they may associate that time, that snapshot in time, as being more stable, as being more exciting, as being more innovative, as being doper maybe than where they are right now. And I really think that it could be used as a coping mechanism, especially if people don't even know that is a method of coping, right? Just kind of go back and think about, so for instance, I still have the DOC, the Formula album, in heavy rotation. Low End Theory is in heavy rotation still. There's certain albums that, if I still had a CD player, they're not coming out the CD player. Right? The Formula, Low End Theory, De La Soul is Dead, no doubt. Black Sheep, both Black Sheep albums, because that was just my era. Wolf in Sheep's Clothing and Nonfiction. Diggable Planets, Blowout Cone. Even though I love both the first and second album, but I love Blowout Cone. There's certain albums that get heavy. Jodeci, Diary of a Madman. Right? There's certain albums that I just keep in heavy rotation. Not that it, as I'm speaking of it, I might be doing it because it reminds me of a foregone time. And, I don't want to be that curmudgeon and that old dude saying music is whack, movies is whack, anything about now is whack, and back in our day was better. Nah. A lot of stuff now is way better than it was back then. But I think in certain cases, I just think the uncertainty of today and tomorrow is causing people to find comfort in days past. And that's kind of how I wrote that. But yeah, that's all the topics that I have. So now I can kind of clear my queue and start another podcast ideas list. And maybe I'll probably start with code switching. That's a good one to start with. That'll be a dope one to maybe try to find a guest to talk about. So if you're watching this and you want to be a guest and talk with me about code switching, reach out. But there's nothing else I want to talk about, in class. I'm trying to think before I end this. Nah,